Well, my first walk for about 5 days. I haven't been 100%, so doing a lot of sleeping and what have you. So yeah, haven't been the best. The result Saturday night didn't help much with Palaszczuk romping it in. That was very disappointing. I must admit, I didn't think they were a shoe-in to win the election, the LNP. I've always been a critic of Deb Frecklington. I thought she was a pretty ordinary opposition leader. Very hard job, but she made it look even harder. There was also this weird thing when they had a debate just before the actual election, and they did this sort of pantomime type routine where Palaszczuk and Frecklington sort of put their elbows together. They touched elbows. I don't know what that was all about, but it looked really weird and just a strange sort of way to act, like a couple of schoolgirls doing a panto or something. It was just a weird look. But anyway, I don't know what the explanation for that was, but it looked very awkward at the best. But I think why I was never particularly confident, even though Labor's been in power for some time. Generally, when a party's been in power for so long, it is vulnerable to defeat, and that's the beauty of democracy, that we get rid of the bastards we're sick to death of. Take note, Vladimir Putin, who's now a leader for life, and Xi Jinping as well. This is what dictators do. They just basically put themselves in forever, and you have absolutely no say. And that's what I like democracy. In spite of the fact I'm very unhappy with the result, because I think it's going to be bad for Queensland. Bad for Queensland because we'll have ballooning debt. The public sector will again be favoured. Corruption is given the green light, because even though Jackie Trad lost her seat to the Greens, the Labor got away with it. And it's a bad sign for the future. And then there's crime, things like crime up here, which is youth crime's out of control. Nothing's going to be done about that. It's just going to be, and there's going to be no development of the rural areas, no dams. So, yeah, I see the basically stagnation for Queensland for the next 4 years, which is not good, especially considering all the crap we've been through this year. So very disappointed with the result, but I think it's a COVID result. COVID tends to favour incumbent governments because the people are scared. And when the electorate is scared, they do things they wouldn't normally do. And as I say, the natural cycle would have been that Labor would have got turfed in this election. But I think COVID has probably saved them. I can't conclusively back that up with stats, but it is my gut feeling. And when I see what happened in New Zealand, again with a very far left government, which is again going to cause a lot of economic pain, in my opinion, you know, I just think, yeah, well, the COVID steamroller is hard to overcome, although apparently sentiment was moving against having more lockdowns, interstate lockdowns, just before the election. 51% of the electorate did actually wanted the borders open, so that was interesting. It looked like it was a sign of some hope for Libs, but I don't think it was. Anyway, so that was the prelude, the entree electorally. The big game is happening tomorrow, our time, Tuesday, US time, with the presidential election. Again, COVID hangs over the election. The big question is, have the Democrats come out in force to vote? And if so, are they going to overwhelm the Republicans? Because there's no doubt that Trump has a very energised base, but is it going to be enough to push him over the edge? The polls were terribly wrong last time. Hopefully they're terribly wrong this time. I've been saying that I think Trump will crush the election, but I'll put a COVID cautioner on that one, because I think the COVID effect is a real wild card with elections. So it's very difficult to say what's going to happen. If Biden wins, it will be a tragedy not only for the States but for the world. I think Trump has been an excellent president, and he's got his faults. He's not perfect, but what you see is what you get, and I like that. A lot of politicians disguise their true motives. So what's going to happen tomorrow? Very good question. I still think Trump is favourite to win, simply because the incredible support shown on the ground with posters and placards and rallies. There's just no enthusiasm for Biden at all. But that's not to say that the Democrats won't still come out in force compared to the Hillary debacle in 2016, because everyone believed Hillary was going to win that election, except a few pundits, including myself. But that meant that probably a lot of Democrat supporters didn't come out to vote. So the question is, if there's a lot of people voting, it could well favour Democrats, and it may not be as conclusive as I was thinking. And I said Trump would crush the election. I'm not quite as confident as I was throughout the last few months. He should, but there's a few factors involved. The COVID is the biggest one. The other one is electoral fraud. There's a lot of problems with the voting systems in America. They have problems we don't have. The other factor I think will work in Trump's favour is all these riots. Peaceful demonstrations, as the mainstream media would portray them. People rioting in the streets and looting in a lot of big cities is not going to go down well in suburbia. And I think that could be a major factor that's unique to America, that especially compared to Australia, we had nothing like that here, to actually sway a lot of nervous voters. So scaring voters seems to be a very good way of winning an election, and I think the rioters may well have scared a lot of potential Democrat voters, independents, to actually sway to Trump. But we'll see. A lot of the groundwork shows that Florida's actually now won by Trump. Now, if that's true, that's a big bonus, because that'll get it to a lot of electoral college votes, and it's a crucial swing state. But we'll see. It's a lot of things can happen. It's a very fluid situation. Hopefully this time tomorrow I'll be feeling a lot calmer, but this election has such profound implications internationally as well as for America itself, that the thought of a Biden government, which will end up being a Harris government anyway, because Biden is already totally incoherent. He's babbling, he's making up words. Worked for Shakespeare. I don't think it'll work so much for Biden. But he'll basically get tapped on the shoulder and he won't go the distance. So that's my prediction anyway. And Harris, I can't stand the woman. She's as bad as Clinton in certain ways. She's an uber left liberal, and yet she's actually been really hard on black voters. And that's the other issue too. A lot of these minority voters are coming out in support of Trump, which hasn't happened before now. There's just so many countervailing effects in this election. If the Latino and the black voters really do come out in record numbers for Trump, and all the polls are showing that, well, this will be very interesting. It's not over till the fat lady sings. This election may end up in the courts, or it may drag on for weeks with votes cast by mail. It could get really ugly. There could be basic insurrection in America. The place could turn into what looks like a civil war. It is possible. Feelings are very polarised. It's a much more volatile situation than in Australia. Of course, I'm in Queensland, pretty laid back. The only thing that's been disappointing is the pathetic juvenile comments I've received from ALP supporters trying to rub my nose in it because the LNP won. Not only do they swear, which is their way of arguing, they cannot make a proper cogent argument. but they just use abuse, either verbal or physical, and that's the sort of supporters we're looking at. We're looking at a mob type mentality rule, and I'd say that I'm not looking forward to the next 4 years politically here in this particular area. Anyway, that's how I feel about it. So that's my amateur analysis of the whole thing. Yeah, the huge issue for me is the whole assault upon democracy in America, which is happening at the moment. The Democrats who are doing some really dodgy things, in my opinion, they just don't seem to really want to prosecute people who are obviously rioters and looters, as opposed to genuine protesters. So they're undermining the fabric of America by doing that. They're driving people further away from the cities because it's just not a safe place to live, and just accentuating the big push away from the cities because of COVID. People just don't want to live in cities that don't, if they're locked down, they don't provide the facilities they normally would anyway. And secondly, it's a better lifestyle, cheaper lifestyle in the country, especially if you look at a place like San Francisco. But the biggest issue for me right now is the way that the American MSN, which is all the left-wing media, which is everything apart from Fox to a large extent when it comes to broadcast media, have basically censored the Biden corruption story with his son in the Ukraine. The whole thing stinks to high heaven. His son, Hunter Biden, had a seat on the chair of a gas company with no experience in that industry whatsoever. It was just a cash cow for the Bidens, who are now getting as bad as the Clintons by the looks of things when it comes to corruption. It's really a bad story. Some said it was bigger than Watergate, yet the mainstream media like CNN et al., which is MSNBC, etc., and the broadcast stations, apart from Fox, have all just basically muzzled the story to protect Biden. Absolute partisanship towards one candidate. The press are supposed to expose corruption, not censor stories. That's the sort of thing that Pravda would do. And it looks as though most of American media, mainstream media, now resembles Pravda rather than a free inquiring press with investigative journalists. That doesn't seem to be what's happening now, and it's a very, very dangerous trend. Do not underestimate how important this issue is. Well, that's about it for today. I don't feel like doing much more recording. Please give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, and comments. Make comments, and just lastly, please subscribe if you feel you enjoyed what you saw. So have a good day, and I'll sign off now.